5A, and they lost last night to a really good Santa Maria team. They lost 41-14. Santa Maria had a halftime lead of 34-0 and cruised to a 41-14 victory over the over the Catholic High Bears. Santa Maria Gators, a really good football team. We're going to see them next week. They're going to play McKinley High, McKinley's homecoming, and that's a tough battle for McKinley. Someone didn't quite schedule that properly to play a team as tough as Santa Maria for their homecoming. What do you think, Eric?
I'll tell you what. If you want to go big, go big. I'll say this much: McKinley is not afraid to put big boys on the schedule. We've seen them doing it all year long, and this is no exception. The good news is you can catch this marquee matchup with these powerhouses on LouisianaAllAmericanSports.com. Next Friday at 7 p.m. we will be carrying the Santa Maria McKinley game coach Robert Signator, kind enough to have us intrude into his house yet again.
Speaking of McKinley, McKinley also took on another Gonzales foe last night, and they weren't very successful, losing to East Ascension. East Ascension is playing without the 2014 committee, Sion Palehi, the running back, the all-area running back. He's out with a knee injury that he suffered last week from the Lutcher Bulldogs in a very close game. And the Lutcher Bulldogs we thought that would possibly hurt the East Ascension season. However, they took on McKinley last night, beat McKinley 41-35, and they keep sailing even without Sion Palehi. Now, that was a District 5-5A opener. East Ascension is still undefeated, highly ranked in the state. East Ascension jumped out on McKinley last night, like 35-0 at halftime, and McKinley came roaring back, but just didn't quite have enough to complete the task, and ended up losing to the East Ascension Spartans. So that's going to round out our high school agenda, unless you had something more to add to that, Eric.
Well, he had a little something going on.
Right.
Last night, yes. LouisianaAllAmericanSports.com covered a game in the Crescent City. My own alma mater, the Ben Franklin Falcons in New Orleans. They hosted the Lutcher Lions. It was a tough day for the Falcons. Those birds got their wings clipped. The final score was 46-0. However, Franklin has a very large and loyal alumni base. Mid-City Yacht Club in New Orleans was kind enough to show the webcast on their TV there for their members to view. So, there was a lot of alumni support rallying, so just a special thanks to Benjamin Franklin High School and Mid-City Yacht Club and their alums for really all their help and participation. Lutcher did have a couple of standout players. First of all, their quarterback, Lewis Landrum III, or LL3 as some of their teammates call him, just an interesting talent. He really can put the ball in the air, has good downfield vision, great arm, and he's just a junior. One of his receivers, though, Keon Williams, coming into the game, he had 303 receiving yards on 15 catches. Do the math, that's 20 yards a catch and 6 touchdowns. Yesterday, he went off 2 touchdowns. One was a 70-yard bomb. Another was a 64-yard punt return for a touchdown. And he also had another touchdown reception of about, 25 yards. Really impressed with his talent. He went off yesterday. So Keon Williams is one to look out of the Crescent City in that district. So I think, by the way, public service announcement to all of you out there. If you have anywhere to be today, make sure you tack on about 20 minutes to the time it's going to take you to get there, because game day traffic for the LSU Florida game is no joke. I-10 is completely congested. You might be better off on a scooter or a bicycle. So yeah, I think that will probably round out our high school roundup. And after this short recess, we'll be right back with some excitement in the world of college sports. You are listening to Louisiana All-American Sports on 96.9 FM WHYR-LP Baton Rouge Community Radio. All right, we are back in the hizzy on Louisiana All-American Sports. I'm Eric Hatfield along with Coach Perry Daniels. We have some little bit of an event going on today, one that could, cause some major traffic jams. Out there at LSU, they will be taking on the visiting Florida Gators, and we will be talking a lot of LSU Florida very, very shortly. Of course, if you're out there tailgating today, you should be flipping on and telling your friends to flip on 96.9 FM and catching this fine, high-quality, soon-to-be Marconi Award-nominated radio program. But first, we're going to go across the bluff. Perry?
Yeah, Eric, let's start off over on the bluff with the Southern University Jaguars taking on the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Alabama A&M Bulldogs, who happen to be 2-2 in district in the SWAC. Wow, I'm still thinking high schools. In the SWAC, they're 2-2. Alabama's coming off a big victory actually they lost last week to Mississippi Valley, which was a huge upset, actually. That was Mississippi Valley's first conference victory. The Jaguars took last week off, so they're not, they didn't play last week. They're coming off a bye week, which they needed after losing to the SWAC leaders, Jackson State, in a very close game. They lost to Jackson State here at home at A.W. Mumford Stadium. The Southern University game kicks off at 6 o'clock, and it should be a really good one, Eric. Southern University is leading the SWAC in passing, and Alabama and A&M is leading the SWAC in overall defense. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what develops there. I really think those Jaguars, though, should come out with a victory here to maintain pace with the Prairie View Panthers. Prairie View's right now a half a game ahead of Southern University. However, if they finish tied in that Western Division of the SWAC Conference, Southern wins the tiebreaker because Southern beat Prairie View here at home 62-59 a few weeks back.
Wow, a lot of defense in that game.
Right. Well, it was a classic old SWAC battle, It reminded me of the days of Jerry Rice and Willie Totten.
Oh, God, yeah, I remember those guys. And if you want to move a little farther, they had Steve McNair and that bunch. But yeah, I hear there was definitely a lot of air under the ball in those days.
It really was. So that should be a very good matchup up on the bluff. I'm looking forward to it, and I think we're good covering that in that aspect of it. We're going to jump right into the big game down in Tigertown at Death Valley. The LSU Tigers taking on the Florida Gators. And Eric, if you want to jump into
that. And yes, indeed, we have the number 17 Florida Gators coming on down to Tigertown to take on the LSU Tigers. What can we say about this season? This is as pivotal a game as LSU is going to have to date on the schedule, especially having lost to Georgia a couple of weeks ago. LSU does have a few advantages in this game. First and foremost, they are at home. The one disadvantage, it's a 2:30 kickoff, and LSU's record at night in Death Valley is very, very different than during the day. I don't know if it's the moon or the biorhythms or the stars, whatever it is. LSU's record during the day is starkly different than at night in Death Valley, particularly against. Now, of course, part of that is the only times the games are moved during the day is when you're playing a marquee opponent. So that you're not playing Kent State or UAB or anybody of that ilk, Sisters of the Poor or anything like that. So that's one differentiator there. But let's look at Florida. Florida had a tough break a few weeks ago when their quarterback, Jeff Driscoll, was knocked out for the season with a broken leg. Driscoll, was moving them along okay, but it seems to me, Perry, that the replacement, I wouldn't wish a broken leg on anybody, but it could be the break that Florida needed. Boom. Tyler Murphy, who's coming to replace Driscoll, he's done an excellent job. I mean, in the games he's played, let's just look at it. Jeff Driscoll, 477 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I want to say that was through 3 games played, if I remember correctly. Tyler Murphy, coming in since then, I believe he's only played 2.5, 3 games, 530 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 72% completion. So, look, so far he's definitely filled in seamlessly, if anything, for Driscoll. I think Florida did have one cupcake opponent during his games, but he's been very, very, he's quality. He's a quality replacement, and LSU's got to contend with him. So, the Gators' big asset they've had this year has been their defense. They've only allowed 12 points a game. Again, they have had some cupcakes on the schedule, but 12 points is 12 points. I mean, even LSU surrendered 21 to UAB. So there are definitely some factors that LSU has to contend with. Now, LSU has its own weapons on the form of Zach Mettenberger, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Jeremy Hill, Alfred Blue, Terrence McGee, Kenny Hilliard. I mean, LSU's got weapons. So Florida's defense, I think that average is going to tick up just a little bit today, Perry.
Yeah, probably so. Based on what we've seen so far out of that LSU offense. However, Eric, the traditional saying is that defense trumps offense in games like this. However, LSU just has so many weapons.
Yeah.
That it's going to be interesting to see how Florida responds and exactly what they do to stifle this tremendous LSU offense. It's a tremendous LSU offense. Now, I'm a little concerned, though, because of the notoriety of the Florida defense. Do we know who has been the Florida Gator opponents?
Well, the Gators do not have their schedule in front of me, but I did see two. I wouldn't even call them. If they were mid-majors, then one of them might even have been an FCS opponent. I mean, they had 2 games on the schedule when I was kind of reviewing this year, and that were opponents that shouldn't have been on the field with them. But, the same token, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And a lot of teams against mid-majors, even Alabama was lulled into this trap. You get to the second half, you're blowing them off the map. You got your second teamers in there. Even these people have pride. They're football players. They can run up some points. Florida hasn't even allowed that.
Right.
So, there's something to contend with, and they need it because without Driscoll in the lineup and without really a dominating running back and with good receivers but not burners, they're going to need that defense to step up. Conversely, LSU, it could be an interesting and equal matchup because
right.
LSU's defense has shown some mental lapses.
Oh, wow.
I will not say there. Here's the thing, though, and there are a lot of things you can identify mistakes. You can identify mental lapses. You can identify opportunities to improve communication. What you cannot teach and what you cannot identify is talent. And I refuse to believe that the Tigers are void of talent. I do see a lot of mental errors. Now, I did see them. They seem to tighten up. Whatever halftime adjustments Coach Chavis made against Mississippi State last week, it seemed to work because Mississippi State was, acting like they belonged there for a while, and that peasant revolt was crushed in the second half as we saw LSU just light it up, and they looked like the team in that second half of the MSU game looked like the team that we expected to see.
However, though, Eric, you and I dialogued a little during that game, and I don't know if it was LSU's defense that stepped up in that second half, although they did shut down the Mississippi State Bulldog offense. I think it was due more to that offense being so impressive that it demoralized the Mississippi State team. But even near the end of the game or near the Mississippi Bulldog last few possessions, they still had open men running across the field.
They did.
And the quarterback on one of them, he just made a horrible throw, but his guy was wide open.
Right.
The X's and O's are there. The LSU seems to still be out-schemed defensively. And that's very uncharacteristic for a John Chavis defense.
It sure is. And when you have the likes, again, Mississippi State's only weapon, at least statistically, was Dak Prescott. And he looked like he thought he was Johnny Football or Aaron Murray or Zach Mettenberger last week. And you're right, in the second half, I think he got back to his normal average to mediocre self, if you will, and started making some of the mistakes that you expect a backup quarterback, a run-first quarterback to make, but that is not going to fly, against the University of Florida. Like I said, Tyler Murphy, 530 yards, 72% completions. He knows how to identify an open man.
Right.
He can find an open man.
And he can probably execute the pass a little bit better than what we saw last week out of Mississippi State.
I would assume so. And so this is a different caliber of opponent. LSU's got to get that cleaned up. Now, there's another philosophy, although I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but I'm sure a lot of y'all out there would probably take this point of view that the best defense is a great offense. And what we saw last week was we blinked and flashed. The scores in the 30s. Flash. Right. It's all of a sudden they have 59. LSU has 59 points.
Right.
So, it could be a potential shootout. It really could be, and they'll always make me uncomfortable, but LSU is at home, which makes me a little more comfortable with that possibility.
Right. That's exactly right, and that's actually the advantage that I've got to give LSU as I'm picking this game, and I've been toying with this all week, which way to go, because of what I've seen defensively out of LSU. We talked a little bit about last week. We talked a little bit about the linebackers and the lack of blitzing out of the John Chavis LSU defense. And again, in the Mississippi State game, the linebackers stayed at home. We did finally, near the end, start seeing some blitzing off the corners.
Right.
And that seemed to be effective for them.
Right.
However, LSU has tackling issues defensively,
right,
which I haven't seen in a few years.
Got a lot of shoddy tackling.
Oh, wow. That was unbelievable.
In the last couple of weeks. A lot of shoddy tackling. Some I don't want to say untimely penalties because the game wasn't close, but some silly penalties that we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Right.
That's got to be cleaned up. And, this 2 weeks in a row that we've seen some red flags on the defense. Right. And the question is, you coached athletes. I mean, how do you clean that up? How do you get them to buckle down and focus and not do silly stuff?
Well, I think first you have to identify what's the source of it. Is it because they're just young guys and they haven't been on the field a lot?
Right.
If that's the case, then the only remedy is time.
Right.
You've got to let it play itself out.
Right.
And I know that we've got a couple of guys coming back defensively this week for LSU. I'm not sure who it is that missed last week. I think it was a safety or something that is returning this week. So maybe that's going to get some of the youngsters off the field. But that's only one or two people, Well,
LSU had a lot of, here's a pun, a lot of turnover on defense.
That's right.
And, you had Markevius Mingo going to the NFL. You had Kevin Minter, I believe, was a high pick. You had some players, and this has been happening every year, which is great. It's a sign of a great program, great recruiting, and good defenses. But I have noticed a lot more youth, a lot more underclassmen, a lot more sophomores and juniors on the field, a couple of freshmen.
And the other guys were underclassmen. However, they were high NFL draft choices.
Right.
They left early.
Right.
So these guys that are on the field now for our Tigers have been thrust into this.
There's definitely a vacuum of experience there, of playing time. So, I mean, it's something that's going to have to work itself out. But fortunately, there's the yin and yang of LSU football. We have finally got a passing attack.
Right.
We have got a quarterback who can make pro-style throws.
A superb running game.
Just an embarrassment of riches at the running. Listen to some of these figures that just will make your head spin. I mean, first of all, there's the leader of the pack, the pack of wild tigers, if you will, Jeremy Hill, coming into today, 593 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7.5 yards per carry. Every time he touches the football, you can pretty much expect to get some big yards. Then there's Alfred Blue. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, although he's much more limited than Hill. Stephen McGee, the freshman, 6.4 yards a carry. He has 3 touchdowns in the year. And Kenny Hilliard, the big fire plug, already has 5 touchdowns, most in short yardage situations. So he only gets the ball so much, but when he does, watch out, he's going to run you over. And then, of course, there's Copeland, the fullback, who doesn't get a whole lot of touches, but he can move the line a yard or two. I mean, they've just got weapons and weapons and weapons and weapons in that backfield. They are loaded. And then when you finally get beaten up by the run, you got to deal with Mettenberger, whose game has stepped up. We've been talking about this every week, and he's still continuing. We keep on saying Heisman hopeful early season. Well, the numbers keep piling up. He now has 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,700 yards passing on the year, 68% completions, 11 yards per attempt. Every time that ball leaves his hand, it's a first down, LSU. I mean, that's not that simple, but you know what I'm saying. So we've got what it takes. What the defense might have lost or might have, may have a vacuum with mental errors, the offense has the capability of keeping the LSU Tigers in games.
And you know what, Eric? I've been looking around the country trying to see who else statistically can match up with Mettenberger from that quarterback position. And I found the guy from Oregon. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. He's got about 14 touchdowns. And they just have a tremendous offense that really putting points up on the board. And speaking of Oregon, because of what we've seen so far in the SEC defensively, this may be the year. If there's going to be a year where the SEC is dethroned from the championship, this may be the year because defensively, we've just fallen off in the SEC. No one's really, other than this Florida team that we're going to see today.
Well, that and Alabama, their defense isn't exactly, isn't exactly made of cream puffs there. I mean,
they're pretty good.
And they're pretty good. I would quote Jets coach Rex Ryan, but we get in trouble with the FCC. Yeah, they're pretty bleeping good.
So we'll see, though. Although when you look at the rest of the SEC, the offense has fallen off tremendously, and even for that school, Alabama.
Right. They're not what they were. They're not bulletproof.
Not what they were, right.
They were bulletproof the last 2 years, and there's definitely some wear in the Kevlar this year.
So, for you folks listening around the country, this may be the year that the SEC is dethroned. But from the quarterback position in Mettenberger, just to finish that thought, there's a guy at Florida State who's playing really, really well from the quarterback position. And I don't recall his name. And the Oregon guy and Louisville's quarterback, Bridgewater.
Yeah, he's putting up some. But again, they're Louisville's in the Big Least.
I agree. I'm not sure.
Did they move over to? I know they're not. I think they're still in the Big East. I know there was a lot of shuffling. So yeah, you gotta.
But I don't know if the voters view it that way.
Right.
I think they view the Big East. They understand that the Big East is not the SEC.
Right.
However, I'm not sure that they penalize someone for playing in the Big East.
Well, yeah, they do.
Maybe they do. They do. Again, Mettenberger's going to have to run the table to even be considered.
Well, and the good news is he's running it so far.
Right.
But the other thing too, you mentioned Oregon. Oregon's been on the flavor du jour 3 years running now, and they've been punched in the mouth every time they've had an opportunity on the big stage.
The difference being, though, in the past, the SEC has been tremendous defensively. And this year, for whatever reason, the defense isn't there. I don't know if that's due to just early graduations, as we spoke of with LSU.
Right.
However, I just think that the defense in the SEC is not what it once was, and that could leave a window open for other teams around the country. If you get into a scoring fest with Oregon,
right,
that's going to mean trouble.
Well, you're right, but the defense in the SEC across the board is not what it once was. The defense at Oregon is as Swiss cheese-like as it ever was.
I agree.
So you got two sides of the ball, but you're right. This is definitely, there's been a lot of talk, and I think there's something to it. This is definitely the year where you have, Oregon looks as good as they ever have. Florida State has just, people are expecting them to go Florida State like they have post Bobby Bowden, and they just haven't. They've continued to run up tabs. They blew Maryland out of the building last week. And I thought that, I was thinking, and I was going to talk about this game, but I said, let me just back off and see. I was thinking, well, maybe Maryland's kind of creeping back into the college football, I don't want to call it aristocracy, but certainly being
upper echelon.
Conversation worthy, and that conversation, was shut down last week.
I think if anyone's going to challenge Florida State over there, it's going to be Clemson. We spoke about the
Clemson
Tigers.
That's the other one. Taj Boyd and that bunch.
Right.
I forgot all about, and Dabo Swinney's got him playing some. We saw what they did to.
They punched us in the mouth last year in the bowl game.
And they punched us in the mouth. And look what they did to the University of Georgia.
Right.
So that's Clemson. I think of all the teams we mentioned, Oregon and Florida, Clemson I think is the complete package because they have a legitimate NFL prospect in Taj Boyd, somebody who definitely had some Heisman rumblings early this year. Great arm, and he can move with his feet. He's like maybe RG3 with not quite as much of the hype and fanfare, and their defense is very good. Clemson can smother you. They play solid defense. They stay at home. They don't allow themselves to get run over. So, of all those, of all the bridesmaids we're throwing out there, I think Clemson could be the one that catches the bouquet.
Well, and let's move on to the rest of the college world right now. Let's talk a little bit Jadeveon Clowney.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about him and what you think, what your thoughts are there in his situation last week and this week. And we've got to talk Lane Kiffin, man.
Yeah, we could definitely talk Lane. I'm gonna start with the topic I think deserves maybe a little less of our listeners' time, and that's Jadeveon Clowney.
Yes.
The one thing that we're good at in the media is looking for stories and manufacturing. That's why we're on the air. That's why people listen. But I think, to borrow a line from the late Carol O'Connor in the hit TV show In the Heat of the Night, this conversation suddenly got a little silly and no longer warrants my attention. The bottom line is Jadeveon Clowney got his ribs busted. He has spurs in his feet that he's delayed putting off surgery for his foot until after the season. these are not the actions of a guy who's checked out. If you checked out, have the surgery, then your season's over, or you just play 1 or 2 more games. You know, I think there's some frustration from Spurrier. I think he detects that maybe Clowney has some mental reservations. He certainly has a lot on the line. He certainly does not want to be another Marcus Lattimore, who had a gruesome injury last year, and you better believe with that
his teammate,
with that knee went millions of dollars. You can flip it any way you flip the conversation any way you want, and he stands to be the first pick in the draft. Now, you know, this guy's got so much talent. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Willis McGahee, who blew his knee to smithereens and still went like top 10 pick because he had that much talent, and it paid off. But I can on a human level, I can understand the reservations because you're doing this for free.
I can understand. Right, he's probably broke. He probably needs to borrow money from a coach, but can't.
Right. If he needs to make needs to get a ride home.
Right, and
you better not pay him back if he does take the money. End up like Clinton Dix.
and he's gonna be a millionaire if he just holds on until next year at this time.
Yeah, right.
You know, so
Harry, you bring up an interesting point there. If I'm Jadeveon Clowney and I see what happened to Clinton Dix, I go to a coach and I get some Benjamins. Then they throw me out.
Right. I'm no longer eligible. However, I still go in the first round.
Shoot.
You know, so it's just amazing to me. South Carolina fans, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for criticizing this young man. As much notoriety as he has brought that team, Steve Spurrier, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
I'll give Steve Spurrier a buddy, because he did kind of go off after the game last week, but he did say he did some great damage control. He said, I'm going to quote it as best I remember it, but probably a lot of you sports radio junkies have heard this already. If Jadeveon Clowney never plays another down at South Carolina, we should be thankful that we got to experience this young man and what he brought to South Carolina football, something to that extent, which is true, and I think that was great damage control by Spurrier.
And I did hear that quote, and I'm glad you brought that up to be fair to Coach Spurrier. All right, let's move on to the coach on the West Coast of the USC Trojans that have fallen off tremendously. What do you think there about Lane Kiffin?
Oh, I could have some fun with this. I mean, you know, we all take business trips, right? We have conferences we go to. Those of us who are in sales have to fly, you know, to this destination or across the country for meetings. If you're in management at a large company, you have to fly sometimes. We have presentations to make, and we work hard, and we travel, and traveling just sucks. I mean, if you have to get off, just getting on the plane in and of itself, right, is exhausting. So imagine this. Your job is to coach about 80 some odd dressed out 18 to 22-year-olds. You get your head handed to you. Was it Arizona or Arizona State? You go down to the desert and you get dried out, put it that way. And it's 3 in the morning and you walk to the airport. I'm sure there are plenty of you out there listening who've been fired from a job before. I don't think there's anybody out there, or very few of you out there, who got fired in the middle of the night when you stepped off the plane.
Right.
And Lane Kiffin, you know, he steps off the plane and he got the George Jetson Mr. Spacely treatment. You're fired as soon as he steps off. Don't come back to campus. Here's a box with L. Kiffin written on it with a Sharpie on it. Get out. You don't have to go home, but you have to get out of here. But here's my thought on Lane Kiffin. He lost that team. And I mean, he really lost that team. There was an interview about 2 weeks before the axe came and took his head off like a guillotine. One of the players, there was a talk of a players-only meeting that happened, and Lane Kiffin said, oh, there was no players-only meeting, and they had some back and forth. And finally, one of the players, this is a player on the team, and I wish I could remember who it was, but it was a position player, I believe a starter. He says, players, Kiffin, players meeting. Kiffin don't know about that. That's exactly what he said. And it's almost like he knew. That's how you know that a coach's power with the team has diminished when a player goes to the media and says that. He didn't fear in Lane Kiffin to say that. Right. I mean, he dissed him on television. And then last week when Ed Ogeron, who was just a character to say the least, but Ed Ogeron goes out there, they get a big victory. They ran up a whole lot of points. The offense was completely inept all year long. I believe it was the quarterback, but I remember this quote. I think it was the quarterback. He throws his arm around Coach O, and he said, let me tell you, no disrespect. This is the quote. No disrespect to the former coach. No disrespect to Coach Kiffin. No disrespect to the former coach, but it's great to play for a guy for whom you want to run through a wall. This guy to my right.
That was very telling.
So he didn't even bother to mention Kiffin's name, and he pretty much said, I wasn't running through a wall for that fool. It's good to have a real coach here, you know?
Right.
So what does that tell you, Barry?
That wraps up And he said it as though he was speaking for the team. That was the starting quarterback.
Right.
And he said, we now have someone that we'll run through a wall for. So it wasn't personal. He's the leader. Here he is talking about what a difference the interim coach is making. Lane Kiffin, you never should have been the head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers.
No.
And
not if you're going to up and leave.
Right. Well,
after hiring your day.
First you shouldn't have gotten that job. You get the job because your dad is who he is.
Right.
And then you do mediocre at best, to be not kind.
Right.
You were mediocre at the University of Tennessee, and they hire you.
He throws the deuces.
To go to USC, one of the most historic programs in the country.
Right.
And there was no way you were qualified to do that.
Right, Notre Dame West out there pretty much.
Right. So, good riddance to you. Good luck to you. And hopefully, I'm thinking, who are you going to coach next? Be the head coach of next? Maybe the Cowboys.
Maybe an AFL team. Well, he has the NFL. He definitely has the NFL credentials as a coordinator. I mean, he knows he's got offensive skills. He's going to get a job. Guys like, not to mention he's Monty Kiffin's son. Guys like that land on their feet. But like I think we might have, I don't know, we did not discuss this before, but when he got fired in Oakland, we all know the late Al Davis's reputation. It goes back as long as a day. A renegade, kind of a jerk at times. But the fact of the matter is that the whole deal with Lane Kiffin, the way in which he left the Raiders, and you have, assistant coaches punching each other in the face on the sideline, and Al Davis talking about, when Al Davis is talking about trust, when Al Davis fires somebody and to the media looks sympathetic, something's wrong with you. So to borrow a line from Lil Wayne, you can. I'm going to censor this a little bit, but you can smoke weed, talk blank like Lane Kiffin, but we see where that gets you, and that's out of the door with a pink slip.
We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Louisiana All-American Sports Radio.
2009, they really hammered them on Monday Night Football in the Superdome. So Breeze has a track record against Brady. Second of all, there's no Rob Gronkowski. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to play, and you never know. I mean, Bill Belichick lies through his teeth about injury situations, but it looked like Gronkowski was probably going to play, and now it looks like Gronk will be saddled. With that makeshift receiving core, there's just, I think the Saints have got everything going in their favor. Vegas has the Patriots favored by 3 going into the week. I think that was with some hope that Gronk was going to play. I think the black and gold, the Who Dat Nation, will have a lot to celebrate in the Northeast this Sunday.
You know what, Eric? This is another really tough game. The LSU-Florida game is a tough game for me to pick. And just to be on record there, I'm going to pick LSU just because they're at home. And I think it's going to be a very close game, but I think LSU will win. Now getting back to the Saints, all of the statistical data tells me that the Saints are going to win this game Sunday. However, Eric, I'm going to go against the Saints just based on, and strictly based on, it's the NFL. How often, it's 6-0. It's like it's just time for them not to win, and they're going against a decent Patriot team. They're not world beaters anymore, but they're decent. And I love the Bill Belichick, the Nick Saban coaching line, that whole lineage of coaches. I just have a lot of respect for those guys who once coached under Bill Parcells with the New York Giants. And I think that the Patriots find a way to hand the Saints their first loss of the season this year. And the only explanation I have for it is it's just kind of time for the Saints to lose one.
And I'll tell you why. The Saints might or might not be due to lose one. That's a possibility. But the Patriots are not due to sucker punch the Saints. If you look last week, they went to Cincinnati. They were able to muster up 2 field goals. That isn't going to get it done against Drew Brees, or really any high-powered offense in the NFL.
Cincinnati is a really good football team.
Excellent defense. No, Cincinnati's fantastic. I'm not knocking them, but The Saints are 13th in the NFL in total team defense, and in takeaway, they are second only to the Seattle Seahawks. So you have a team that doesn't give up a lot of yards, which is so refreshing this year.
Yeah.
And then and a team that can take the ball away. Now, Brady doesn't serve up too many interceptions, so that might not be a factor, but they still have to move the football. And again, no Rob Gronkowski. Meanwhile, Jimmy Graham is in full effect. One of the polls, and I believe it was either CNN Sports, Sports Illustrated, or ESPN, major publication, on MVP watch. They had number 1, Peyton Manning, number 2, Drew Brees, and number 3 was Jimmy Graham, a tight end.
Right. Well, again, statistically, everything leads towards the Saints. However, it's just a gut feeling that I'm going to go with the Patriots here. But let's move on, man. Let's move on to the Schaub situation in Houston. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely ready. I think we should, Houston Texans have been a story. There are multiple stories with this team. They're just 4 hours up I-10 from Baton Rouge. This is a team for the last 2 seasons that's been considered a legitimate Super Bowl contender with very high expectations. They've won the AFC South. They are the 2-time defending AFC South champions. They're now getting a lot of heat from Indianapolis. They've lost 3 straight. And Matt Schaub has, been a big part of the problem. He has thrown interceptions, returned for touchdowns in 4 consecutive weeks. One more, and that will be an NFL record. It's rough. And the most popular player on the team in bad times is often the backup quarterback. And he's definitely getting a lot of heat in Houston. Well, a friend of mine, Josh Innes, on CBS Sports Radio 610 in Houston, has definitely got folks talking about this, and he came up with a little creative something for the fans to vent about, and they talked about it on the news, and a lot of people rallied around. Not rallied around, that's a poor choice of words, but they liked it, and it made the news, and it was popular. Check this out. This is what they're saying about the Texans quarterback right now.
Take Matt Schaub and cut him. He ain't welcome here no more. Threw another pick, now there goes the season we were hoping for. You better not try to play him Sunday, you should kick him out the door. Take Matt Schaub and cut him, he ain't welcome here no more. Now I've been rooting for the Texans for now on 11 years. And every season ends the same, me crying in my beer. One of these days they're gonna cut Matt Schaub and Case Keenum. He's gonna play.
He has been anointed.
And I can't wait to hear the cheers when Gary gets the nerve to say, take Matt Schaub and cut him. He ain't welcome here no more. He threw another pick, now there goes the season we were hoping for. You better not try to play him Sunday, you should kick him out the door. So take Matt Schaub and cut him, he ain't welcome here no more. Take Matt Schaub and cut him.
Schaub out of the gun, gets the snap, throws to his right. It's picked off. Touchdown, San Francisco. It happens again. Another interception for a touchdown.
He ain't welcome here no more.
All right, so Texas quarterbacks are struggling. We also saw the same thing in North Texas with the Dallas Cowboys and their famous Tony Romo throwing a unbelievable pick. His didn't quite go for 6, however, Texas quarterbacks are suffering. Matt Schaub, I'm going to say this on that subject, Eric, that, the fans should have a right to express their feelings and their concerns. And this was a fun, lighthearted thing. They're done in Houston. And, with ticket prices to the NFL, this is in jest. And those things should happen, that there's nothing wrong with lighthearted fun.
Correct.
This story goes on to develop a little further, though,
right,
with 2 intruders on the Schaub land.
Right.
And that, my friends, is beyond the line. That's crossing the line.
Sick, sick, sick.
You know,
absolutely freaking sick.
You know, silly mortals. We've got to understand that these are just games, you
right.
know, and I'm a victim of this as well, Eric. We get emotionally
sure.
tied to our teams.
Well, that's why we're on the air.
Right, exactly right. Because people are emotionally tied to sports.
Right.
However, you know, I hate to put this guy on such a pedestal. However, I saw an interview last week with the Alabama quarterback,
A.J. McCarron.
A.J. McCarron, and he was asked about the Ha-Ha Clinton Dix situation, and he says that Coach Saban has always taught us to only concern ourselves with the things that we can control.
That's right.
And things that we can't control, we don't worry about. So people, silly mortals,
right.
we can't control what happens on that field.
Right.
Not even today in Tiger Stadium.
Right.
You know, as bad as we want to healthfully cheer for our Tigers, we cannot control that, so don't overly concern yourself. It's just a football game at the end of the day.
Get a life. Get a girlfriend.
So.
Get both. Get a hobby. I mean, in the department store of life, sports is in the toy section.
That's
and
right.
I usually say that really for players, some of these young high school kids that we worked with over the years. But if you're a fan, that goes double. You're a spectator.
Right.
Come on, man. you know?
We're going to move on to that. We've got Major League Baseball, huge games going on right now. Again, my beloved St. Louis Cardinals, who I'm emotionally tied to, Eric. I don't want to be, and I try to stay above that fray.
Well, you got to be flying high this morning.
Well, hey, the Cardinals are playing fantastic. You know, we endured a lot of comments in that Pittsburgh Pirate series, which was a great series, and my friend out of Atlanta, Derek Thomas, sent me a great article. I didn't post it on Facebook, Derek, because I didn't want to be overbearing to folks on Facebook, but a great article speaking from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the local newspaper there, speaking on how the Cardinals endured all the comments about how the Pirates were this good, this great, going to do this, going to do that, and the Cardinals did what they do. They played solid, boring baseball. Right. And they came out with the victory.
But you know what? I got to say, that last night really was one for the ages. You have a game that, after 9 innings, you have a game tied at 2. Zach Greinke was outstanding as we expected. I recall, I think he left the game with 10 strikeouts. I could be wrong. But then you also had Kelly for St. Louis, and Joe Kelly just... I didn't think he had it in him. I mean, he's been playing great baseball, but I didn't think he'd be able to stand toe-to-toe with Greinke in the postseason like that in Game 1 of the National League Championship Series. I mean, I heard you could see his energy. He was just, his veins were bulging, and he was about to jump off the mound. He was so excited. He had so much adrenaline when the game started. I thought the moment might have been too big for him, but he settled down, and we were really treated to one for the ages until a little controversy we had in the 10th inning when Mark Ellis came around and tried to score off the sac fly, attempted sac fly, and he collided with Yadier Molina. Was called out, but Molina never actually tagged him, as replay showed. But I'll tell you that in baseball, you will never, ever, 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 ever get called safe in a situation like that. They're just not going to give it to you, and I don't think they should. But that's moderately controversial. But then Carlos Beltran in the bottom of the 13th, ice in his veins, money, just really Jansen let loose, and Beltran smacked it to right field, and the game was over. That was a fantastic opening salvo to the NLCS.
And Beltran is the person who threw that ball from right field to get the runner at the plate for the Cardinals. I mean, he just played a great game last night. He's Mr. Clutch. And, a lot of people don't remember that the Cardinals were 1 game away from the World Series last year. They were up 3-1 over San Francisco, and San Francisco came back to win. It was their manager's, Matheny's, his first year as a big league manager, and I think that they just didn't believe that they could do it in that first year.
I hear you.
So
I agree.
They stumbled down the stretch, but this year they have a mission to go to the World Series and try to claim that title. Even with Alan Craig, arguably their best hitter, not playing in any of the postseason. So,
right.
well, we're going to move on to that other great series.
Yeah, we got the American League. We have Boston and Detroit. Detroit going to Boston for Game 1. Anibal Sanchez starting tonight against John Lester of the Red Sox.
If I could jump in here and just remind the listeners that Noel Jackson is coming up right after us, Music Satisfaction.
Noel Jackson.
Starting at 11 o'clock. So stick around after the show. Right now you're listening to Louisiana All-American Sports. But if you could just go ahead, buddy.
So we have Sanchez and Lester. Boston, for much of the regular season, I was saying Detroit just looked bulletproof, but a couple of things happened. Number one, Miguel Cabrera, who is probably going to win his second consecutive MVP, he had the groin injury. He's clearly lost some power. And Boston just looks really, really good. Their pitchers are where they're supposed to be. They're pitching very well, and their hitting is just off the charts. Detroit's going to have a tough time. They have the pitchers, but I think Game 1 is probably going to go to Boston. I think, you have Scherzer versus Buchholz in Game 2. That could be scoreless going into the late innings for all we know. And then you have Verlander and Lackey in Game 3. So I think today might be the only opportunity we have to see some hits. So while both of us have our expectations and predictions, sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. And what we decided to do is kind of look into what we had last week and talk about where Perry and I were right and where Perry and I were wrong. So we'll like to treat you to this little opportunity to have a dose of some I Told You So. Smash Mississippi State by today. I'm thinking 25.
Yeah, I have no idea. I haven't checked what that is coming out of Vegas. I think that LSU wins this going away,
right,
at least by 30 points.
I don't want people to tar and feather me, but I do, or burn me as a heretic, but I do think this might be where the Saints' unbeaten streak goes to an end. Chicago. It's conditions that really favor a power attack like the Bears.
You know what, though, Eric? I'm going to have to disagree with you, my friend.
I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong.
I think the way those Saints have played, the way they look Monday night, man.
I said I'd love to be wrong. I'll be happy. I'll do a tap dance on the air, whatever it is, wash somebody's car. Tweet I told you so at LAA Sports. Tweet at LAA Sports. I told you so. I'll be happy to take it if we win. I just
First time in 10 games Drew Brees did not throw for at least 300 yards. He will take the win and the 5-0 start.
Patriots are going to play at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Patriots, another unbeaten that I think goes down this week. I think the Patriots fall off the unbeaten wagon this week.
I agree with you there. I like that Cincinnati ball club.
Really promising as far as some matchups. This afternoon, the Tampa Bay Rays have got to make up for that shellacking they took at the hands of the Boston Red Sox yesterday. They were obliterated at Fenway. I think the Rays win today. They got David Price on the mound, who's... It's going to be interesting. They're in Oakland. I don't think Oakland goes back to Detroit down 0-2. And Sonny Gray has been a very impressive rookie. This guy, 5-3, 2.67 ERA, 67 strikeouts. He's only pitched 64 innings. So this kid is something special. I think Oakland wins this game today. I don't see how the Braves even recover. They don't have an ace. The Dodgers have Clayton Kershaw and Zach Greinke, who are pretty much bulletproof, and if it comes back around the way for Game 4 and 5, which it might not, I don't see how. And so there we have Eric and Perry were right and Eric and Perry were wrong. I was definitely happy to eat some crow on the New Orleans Saints. But that, kids, we were winding it up here on Louisiana All-American Sports. We are, of course, got about 90 seconds left. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today on Louisiana All-American Sports. We have Noel Jackson's Music Satisfaction coming up in just a moment. So, look, join us next week, same time, same place. 11 o'clock a.m., 96.9 FM, or at WHYR.org, streaming, or via the TuneIn radio app on your mobile phone, searching for WHYR. You can catch us 11 a.m. Saturday morning, and be sure to catch Donaldsonville, my goodness, Sanamaw at McKinley, our Louisiana All-AmericanSports.com game of the week. For Perry Daniels, this is Eric Hatfield. Go Tigers, and good afternoon.